The reality is AI has infrastructure constraints, it has a trust deficit, and it has a skills gap. And we're helping with all three.
Founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy, Patrick Moorhead.
6, 5.
CEO of the Futurum Group,
Daniel Newman.
6, 5.
You know a lot about what's going on, Moorhead?
I think we do.
6-5 Pod is back. We are jacked and excited to be back. Episode 272. We have not been canceled. Daniel, how you doing, my friend?
Back and jacked. I love it. You know that like little bit of like text that we have going back and forth right before the show starts, and inevitably someone like hits the start. And I was like, that would be really funny as like a cold open. Like that part where I'm like, Pat, just imagine if you actually went on one of these CNBC shows like you're going to do today, and you talked your book. You're like, yeah, I gave years of my life to this company and got a $3,400 check, or even better, like, you know, you could tell the story about Bored Apes or whatever great investment you made. You know, it's a good thing though that you know a ton about this technology though, because you do bring a ton of value. But I like your jokes about don't actually do what I do.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I invest in this IRA. I'm allowed like one change every 6 months, and it's got to be in a certain class of equities. But it is good. But Dan, it is great to be back. And I got to tell you, man, it has been a tough 3 weeks. You know, some people were working 9 to 5. I've been working 5 to 9 and on the weekends. I know that's kind of normal for you in perpetuity, but I'm finally getting it back on track. And I do realize that I have limits, but what I'm most excited about is that I'm back in the gym with almost no regulators, right? My doctor's like, okay, you know, you can't push it to the max. And that's not 1 rep max, is just, you know, I'm doing reps of 10 to 15, and it is hard working your way back. And Bestie, I pray that you don't get an injury, because it sucks, or have to get surgery.
I've had a few, but nothing yet that's, well, when I was 30, maybe 30, 31, I was still trying to play soccer, Pat, and I got hit on the side of my leg and I tore an MCL and a meniscus. And I did get taken out. Now, at that time, I was still very committed to my soccer, though. So I did actually retrain. I tore it, had surgery, and I was back in like 12 weeks, which is pretty remarkable. But at 30, now at 44, I fall down trying to play soccer with my son gently onto my shoulder, and I was down for like 12 days. So yes, I I am with you that we should protect these old man bodies. I think the one mistake we make, Pat, is that we need to stop 1 rep maxing. Really stupid at this point.
I injured my shoulder, so I'm never doing one until I do.
Well, I mean, the only problem is you kind of don't know until you do. But like, you're like, I'm going to do 4, and you're like, oops, I can't even do 1. But I mean, realistically, you're kind of know. I just think that push just doesn't make a lot of sense at our age anymore. Being injured on airplanes and trying to hobble around convention centers, I don't know. You look silly. You know, you're going to be Patrick on a knee scooter, like trying to get meeting to meeting.
Yeah, you just never know. I just need to shoot more peptides, and I'll never get injured.
I think we can shill do you think we could do like a full-on peptide shill thing on this show if I really get into this? Like where we get a little advertisers at the bottom, get your peptides?
Probably. And then we'll have to shut it down after this administration. You never know what's going to happen. FDA is kind of fast and loose on this stuff now. You can buy anything, anywhere, which I do appreciate.
It is a little fast and loose. And it's interesting you say that, though, because they want to keep us kind of sick. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy guy, but like eating good food and stuff is not really as heavily recommended as maybe it should be.
Yeah, listen, I'm not at the conspiracy theory point, not saying you are, but I do think you've got the biggest donators to FDA happen to be processed food companies. You're going to have processed foods. So it is nice to see rolling back some of the dyes, rolling back some of the additives, and my gosh, even drinking, right? Like, where did that come from, right? It's not cool to drink. We have the lowest drinking since, I think, 1953, I read. So, love or hate, the
I like you when you drink, to be honest.
a lot more fun. I'm willing to sell my company for nothing. And I'm pretty excited, and I'm in a lot better mood, Daniel. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's get you after it. Let's bring back Fun Pat. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. How about today? We can bring back Fun Pat, and we'll stop torturing our audience talking about health and stuff, because you know why they're here, right? I mean, you already tweeted your workout for the day.
Pretty much.
We got a little tech, don't we? I mean,
yeah, let's dive in here. We got a great show for you today. We are talking a lot of NVIDIA. We're talking a little bit of Intel and the drama that's going on there. We're going to be talking about kind of the hangover of ChatGPT 5, kind of what are our informed thoughts of that. Musk pulls Apple into App Store controversy. But anyways, we got a lot of great stuff coming on. We're going to have a special guest as well. We're not going to do the flip, but I will leave that for then to keep the anticipation going. And then we're going to jump into bulls and bears, talk to some overall high level market, what's going on, what new measurements came out. And then we got a lot of earnings that we got to cover. So let's jump into the Decode. All right, Daniel, pay to play NVIDIA and AMD, 15% off the top, which is more like 30% on the bottom. And as we know very well, if you can negotiate an off the top deal with anybody, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it's led to people being overpaid by gross amounts for the longest period of time. But in all seriousness, this was really easy for me. It's not off the top for NVIDIA and AMD. This will absolutely be passed on to China. The people that are wanting these chips will pay the extra toll. My opinion, of course, you can argue, because this is just like tariffs, by the way. Everyone that's arguing out there that tariffs need to be passed on and become inflationary, and they bring up the costs of things, and maybe our PPI number this week proved that is starting to happen in some ways. So if you believe that happens, do you think that these companies here in the same situation going in the other direction are suddenly just going to eat these costs? The answer, in my opinion, is no. Furthermore, and I'll really actually make it a really simple debate, Pat. Nobody in China wants Huawei chips. China wants 4-year-old deprecated NVIDIA, not because Huawei is so bad. It's just NVIDIA is so good. And the developers there, the researchers, the enterprises, and of course AMD a little bit, but their numbers substantially smaller, just to be very clear. The other thing is, like, I kind of, again, this is one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of smart. I'm not saying that it's kind of another way to extend more tariffs onto China, because if the assumption that I'm making is right and China eats this, then as far as President Trump is concerned, he's actually getting more out of China, because now he's getting them to pay more, which will end up bringing more money back to U.S. companies. So as I see this, Pat, I think China needs U.S. Technology very, very much. There is a bit of a give and take with rare earth magnet. We want rare earth magnet. They're kind of positioning the don't buy NVIDIA, but they're not enforcing it. So clearly that's one of those sort of political theater things, in my opinion. But Pat, this to me is great fundraising. It does open the door to some questions about how much this can happen and how often and where. But it's another way to drive revenues back to the U.S. and it's another way to put costs on the markets that we may or may not want to actually sell to.
Yeah, Dan, that was a great breakdown. And the whole notion of, there's so many things going on here. You've got the notion of reverse tariff, and like, it's unprecedented. Like, who do you write the check to? And is it the transfer cost? Is it the cost? What's the revenue base that it needs to come off of? But I'm not surprised. When I was in Washington, D.C. at winning the AI race, when, Trump and Lisa and Jensen were there, a company called MP Materials presented, and the U.S. government took a stake in them. And therefore, there's no surprise. And I think it was Besant versus Lutnick who talked about the deal they cut with Japan, they had an element of a rev share or I'll call it a success share or a mutual success that I think is interesting. So I wasn't completely blown away by this, but it is it's something that companies are going to have to play in there. And yeah, Trump could just completely cut his deal with China, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then get the money another way. So I think it's another potential loophole here, and also pretends to a potential deal with Intel, which I want to shift into right now. A lot of stuff has happened, right? You initially saw Tom Cotton, who was attacking Lip-Bu for his China investments, and then you had Trump saying that he needs to be fired. And then you had Lip-Bu and team go to the White House, and the president had some very complimentary things to say based on that, and essentially said, "Hey, we'll see you in a week. Come to me with a plan." So there's so many moving pieces going on, and then we get this Bloomberg piece, which, by the way, I don't know who said it first, me or you, but look to the U.S. government to secure an investment there, put a stake in Intel. And, Daniel, that this during wartime in World War II and even World War I, you get war powers where you can essentially tell companies that, hey, stop building automobiles and start building tanks or weapons or something like that. So this is unprecedented, would be unprecedented in the state of that. We're not at wartime. But if I look at what they did with MP materials, and, sometimes I think we're getting too legalistic here. Like you have grants from the U.S. government that are money that's shifting. I mean, the Science Act, and you had the CHIPS Act that was thrown out there. We're writing checks to companies to have them do what we need them to do, and I think that it's the manner that we're thinking, the investment, meaning, hey, I'm going to take an equity share, likely would be during a split. Now, the funny part is I had a few conversations with folks out of Washington, D.C. on the defense side, and they don't want to break up, right? Because they want chips that are not only designed, fabbed with American transistor technology coming from the same company. And gosh, I think I've been on the phone with 5 CEOs of chip companies, a couple conversations with EDA companies, and it's interesting the conversations around how each of them would like to see this go on. So I wasn't being too dramatic where I said, hey, this reminds me of a game of musical chairs, right? And a lot of scenarios, right? When this thing ends up being fully baked, which one of the designers is going to be left out in the cold, right? Who is not going to connect with Intel Foundry? Will Intel Foundry, Intel Product Group be split? Will there be a consortium of investors in Intel Foundry? Final point is that Craig Barrett, by the way, he's a beast. I don't know if you've ever read about him, Daniel, but he ran Intel when everybody feared Intel. Okay. They were the biggest semiconductor company by a factor of 2. Okay. They had the best designs, they had the best foundries, and they were selling products that people wanted in the age of the internet and in the age of PC growth. And after having a bunch of conversations in the industry, his floating the idea of $40 billion. That's exactly how much Intel needs to productize 14A for Foundry. And make no mistake, Intel is going to do 14A for its own products, but what you have to do, Foundry, is you have to buy extra capacity for the new customers. You've got to make sure you've got the right tools, and you've got to make sure that you've got the right IP, okay, from Cadence, Synopsys, and other IP companies like ARM.
Oh yeah, I talked to 6 CEOs and 5 people in Washington this week.
I thought you were going to say 100 people.
100 CIOs a week call me to ask me which ERP they should use every week.
Sounds pretty valuable in the age of generative AI.
Yes, I take 45 minutes to an hour with each of them to talk to them in one day. Anyway, look, TSMC spent $100 billion or, took $100 billion of government subsidy, or roughly, over, a multi-decade period to become TSMC. TSMC is now the biggest juggernaut in the world, arguably the most important technology company in the world. And I know people say it's NVIDIA, or people might say it's something else, but we don't have any of this without TSMC right now. It just doesn't exist. The U.S. being 100% dependent and beholden, it's great for Taiwan's national security because it keeps the U.S. very interested in keeping Taiwan independent and strong. But it does nothing to protect our interests long term. It does nothing to protect a situation in which the China-Taiwan escalates and the U.S. is unsuccessful in immediately defending it. Because like I said, even if we do go to their defenses, we bring that down. IP stagnates. The U.S. can't keep up. We don't have it here. Intel Foundry is the answer. Now, here's the caveat, though, is when I talk about Intel, everyone thinks I'm instantly saying back Intel holistically. I'm not sure about that. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying I'm not sure that's the answer. And to your point, Pat, in your conversations in Washington, is whether or not Intel and Foundry are one company and it's a kind of an IDM with a Foundry aspect of it where people outside of Intel can use their Foundry, or Intel does split off as a design company and then it becomes some sort of USMC. Intel could still do the whole thing here in the US. They would just look more like an NVIDIA or an AMD or a Broadcom, which, by the way, are pretty successful companies. And most of the analysis of Intel as a design company using an outsourced foundry have them being pretty darn successful if they actually split up. The attempt to absorb all the costs to become this integrated manufacturer and foundry has basically made them close to insolvent. And that's really the question mark. So I'm sort of inviting, if we look at TSMC and if everybody's going to sort of idolize and laud TSMC, then I think it's important that we remember how TSMC became TSMC. And that was a conscious effort by the government, not to mention a conscious effort by US companies to support its efforts to become TSMC. So we need that. I mean, if we believe that AI is the most important multi-generation secular trend, and the future is going to be AI, robotics, autonomy, we need to make sure that there's no situation in which IP in the US stagnates and we can no longer make the leading edge chips we need to make. And realistically, if we want NVIDIA and Apple to be able to do what they're promising to do in terms of bringing manufacturing back to the US, we need to offer that capacity. Putting all that weight on TSMC and to a lesser extent Samsung doesn't do the job. So I am here for it, Pat. I think there's a lot of questions to exactly how it gets done, but I think it's the right move. I think the U.S. should get behind it. I always thought the CHIPS Act was a little light. I thought it was a little light, and I thought it underwhelmed the real work that needs to be done. We spend more money on TARP and garbage plans to bail out idiocy in Wall Street than we are right now to make sure the U.S. is absolutely infallible when it comes to leading the world in chip development and manufacturing.
What an interesting flip-flop, though, with Lip-Bu, which was, I believe he quit the board because he wanted to split the company and Pat didn't. And he leaves and he, runs on a platform that we're going to split the company. And he gets in and he sees something that says, you know what, I don't think we should split the company here. And my guess is, and listen, I've debated with a lot of people on this week, is the distraction that it would take to do this. I was at AMD. It took us 10 years, and I had even left beforehand to go from proprietary tools in a proprietary foundry to third-party tools, a lot of reuse of IP, and even using third-party IP to ultimately go to TSMC. That was a 10-year journey, and it's tough to make that swivel. And I was very disappointed to not see when Intel had announced it was going to have an independent board, operating board for its foundry, and that never hit. Right, where is it? Right, I think that was discussed 9 months ago. So I understand direct competitors like Apple, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, and who doesn't want to go on here. So, anyways, today when the pod airs on Monday, we should be hearing about what had happened at that meeting. So Trump had said within the week. But hey, Dan, let's move off of chippery and move into ChatGPT 5, which was announced week before last. And, there are people who are debating, was it a good launch? Was it a bad launch? Where do you sit on this?
It's a tale of two sides, Pat. I think OpenAI's sort of meaningful lead has evaporated. So, I think Google's in play. I think, Grok from X is in play. It's not Anthropic, of course. So this launch did not do what their past launches have done to sort of set this meaningful gap between OpenAI and everyone else. But I also locked myself in my office for 14 hours this weekend playing with it. And it's pretty freaking incredible. I know people are not loving, it's a little slow. It can get a little, because it's doing this whole negotiation, which by the way is how it has to work. When you search Google, it doesn't ask you, well, which algorithm do you want to search with? It's Google navigates all of that in search and then determines what the best results are. Well, with all the different models, when you're looking for different things, when you're coding, when you're looking for information, when you want deep research, when there's a model for that, quote unquote. And so this GPT-5 capability for it to navigate which model it should use, and it interacts with you really intelligently to be here, I'm going to get you something quickly, but if you want more, I can go deeper. And I love some of the services they've built for turn this into a slide, or do you want me to reformat it? I was working for a TV hit this morning. I was prompting. It's do you want me to condense this to a 30-second sort of bit for your set? And it really does a lot of great things. The other complaint, Pat, is that it's less personal. That the last ones felt a little bit more, but I don't know. I just think I don't really care. So that's not a thing for me. I'm not trying to become friends with this thing. I know that some people are marrying their LLMs and dating them and sharing their most intimate secrets with it. I think that's freaking weird. So maybe call me a boomer. By the way, I'm a millennial. Eat your chomp. Keep eating, dude. But my take on it all is I think it was a good launch. I just think this is quickly getting commoditized. And I think these, that's a look I'm familiar with, by the way.
No, we pound these so many times,
Yeah, not on you, by the way. Not familiar with that look on you.
Right.
The overall, though, Pat, this stuff's incredible. By the way, we added the GPT-5 service into Future, our intelligence platform, our AI platform. It's doing great stuff. It is really very turnkey for language. You pair it up with some great proprietary data, build the right backend data lake. I don't think RAG is good, though, by the way. I think RAG is weak.
We're on to MCP and we're on to, right, So.
I just think that I think that the ability to navigate data for the enterprise, there's a reason enterprises have gone slow, and I found it out myself, and you're doing some stuff on your end as well. But RAG just I find that half the time just the open internet does better than ragging against proprietary data. But if you can build the data lake correctly, you can get some pretty incredible results. But I think it was a good launch. I just think, like I said, this is becoming a bit of a nothing burger at this point, because in a week we'll get Grok 5, and then in 2 weeks we'll get Claude 4, and then in 2 more weeks we're going to get whatever comes comes next from whomever. And the only thing is I'm asking everybody out there is please don't hit me up on Twitter telling me that that DeepSeek is going to end NVIDIA and that it's going to evaporate OpenAI in the U.S. as technological lead. I'm not here for it. I'm not interested in it. Don't at me, as they like to say.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it was interesting, the back and forth, and even my son didn't think it was any good, but his measuring stick is code completion, right? And they did have improvements in code completion, but it doesn't even hold a candle to what Claude can do. Claude rules, man. With Opus and stuff like that on that. But it's interesting. In my own personal, I literally spent the entire weekend doing queries. And I appreciate auto, because if I have just a normal query that I want a quick response back, I don't want it doing pro and waiting 13 minutes to tell me what the weather is like in Austin, right? That's nonsense. I really, really appreciated the ability for it to ask me suggestions. And, it has memory, guys. Perplexity doesn't have memory. So I don't have to prompt the heck out of it, right? It knows what companies that I'm engaged with. It knows the tonality of the responses. Like, I don't want any marketing nonsense. Like I don't want any fluffy terms. Don't give me emojis, right? I don't want any of that crap, right? I'm a serious business person, and I want serious responses. So, Daniel, I mean, I was 90% Perplexity, 10% GPT. I have completely flipped that at this point. And
So here's where my head's at on that, by the way, because I agree with you. Is for financial data, Perplexity's done a great job. So if you're wanting the quick read, everything else though, it seems like that'd be an easy thing though. I guess maybe they don't care. But GPT-5, I love the memory feature, by the way. Remember this. By the way, I'm not a serious person. I love emojis. Every tweet comes with a rocket and a fist, just in case you're wondering.
Well, and caps. I'm sure.
No, I'm only that's not all the time though. I'm getting a lot of grief about that. I occasionally copy and paste Shai's tweets just so I can feel better about myself, because they get a lot. Apparently, whatever he shares, I can actually reshare his share without actually making any changes. And there's something about what he says that just drives better engagement. So I think we're just too old and boomery to actually fully embrace the power. We need more millennial / Gen was it Gen Zers?
Yeah.
Exactly. They want to make a lot of money and not have actually accomplished anything. And then they can also tweet and TikTok really effectively.
Except for my son.
He's awesome, by the way. I can't wait for him to come work for me.
Gosh, I know. Me too. He can steal all your everything.
I actually might just let him take over the company. Can we work this out?
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, let's do a deal. Let me make sure.
We could do a deal where he runs it, he makes it very solvent, and he's just paying you and me dividends every month.
I would love that. Let's make sure we cut the deal after 6 vodkas.
Eco, make it happen, buddy. Let's go.
Hey, let's move to the next topic here. We have a new battle between, I don't know if it's is it the Musk Altman battle, or is it the Apple, Tim Apple and Elon controversy? They've butted heads and broken bread together and smoked the peace pipe. But it comes down to this. Elon does not like the way that Grok is promoted or ranked inside the Apple Store app, saying it disadvantages X and XAI, and it puts ChatGPT at the top, right? And it could come down to the deal that Apple and OpenAI cut together, and he's threatening to sue. Says it's anti-competitive behavior, and wants the regulators to come in and probe distribution. Blah blah blah. Is this just another rant from Elon? Does he have a good point, or something different?
I just think he hates Sam Altman. I mean, I literally think this is just pure vendetta at this point. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think Sam is I think he's more likable in some ways, but I still think he's the most diabolical. He actually, you ever seen Stewie Griffin in Family Guy?
No.
You got to watch Family Guy. It's actually a great show. It's a ton of
You
historical.
and I, you and I watched it a couple times together.
Yeah, but a ton of historical references. Like you actually really have to know culture, but it's super inappropriate. So it's got those two things going for it. But like just this diabolical, I'm going to take over everything. He actually hasn't taken over anything yet. And at this point, the one thing he had some type of lead in, he actually is quickly losing, in my opinion. Not to mention, he's got the whole Microsoft issue. But it was funny because, like, that one day Elon basically kind of went after Satya, which we never talked about on the show here. And then Satya just with so much grace, just absolutely just knockout blow.
Elon, man. I wonder, is that Frank Shaw or is that actually Satya? Like
either or. Just if you like go, how do you perfectly respond and troll someone that trolls you?
I know, it was so good.
It's so good. Like I said, I don't have any beef with Elon. Like I think he's great. I think he's great for the world. He's interesting. He's kind of got this, he bought a platform, and I'm pretty sure it was to just pump his ideas, which has gone well. And I'm so glad he saved it, because can you imagine life without X? Like there was a real chance it wouldn't have survived. Because I hate LinkedIn.
By the way, LinkedIn is a social media platform, is exactly what it's like to work at a big company. It's antiseptic. Everybody's fake. And it's just absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I really don't even like to post there anymore. Which, by the way, Satya, make that better. Like,
hey,
I'll get back on topic. Eventually. I'll just wrap this up and basically say, Elon is going to say what he thinks. There may be some truth. There is a benefit to Apple pushing OpenAI. It is the only AI that Apple has that works as of right now. And so maybe he's right. I mean, this goes back to the same thing. Like if this probe became real, it's the same type of thing as the investigations as to whether Amazon favors its own products. The App Store has gotten away forever with all kinds of things that I could argue are antitrust issues. So why would this one be any different? But maybe Elon's the person that could finally give it enough attention and bring enough money to potentially get this out into the open. I think in the end, Elon wants Grok 4 on Apple. To his benefit. But Pat, would you be surprised? I would not be surprised if there's some code deep inside the marketplace that favors things that Apple wants favored.
Of course there is, guys, unless there's an absolute numerical ranking. So let me close it. Here's the only thing I know for sure. When platform policy meets billionaire ego, antitrust lawyers rack up the billable hours. How's that to close?
Lawyers always make money.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's go into this next topic, Daniel. I think this might be the last topic we'll see. So Apple after failing at pretty much everything new that it tried to do after Steve Jobs, with the exception of AirPods, failed vision, getting out of cars, failing AI, it decides it's going to do robots, home security, and smart displays.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a yawner to me. Why don't you try to get? Hey Tim, why don't you try to get Siri to work first? Like I get it, and honestly, like if Apple can do it, like people would probably buy it. I mean, can Apple is this another thing now? Is Elon mad because now Apple's going to challenge Optimus? But frankly, if anyone else is going to sell you a $30,000 robot in your house, it's going to be Apple. But everything Apple has tried to do that isn't the iPhone has sucked. Sorry, fairness, Macs, iPads, everything that doesn't fit the sort of traditional, well-respected, consumer device platforms. Like everything they tried outside of that has really not worked. I mean, XR has not worked. Car did not work. The HomePod has been pretty darn unsuccessful as far as I know. What have they done, Pat, that isn't a PC, laptop, or tablet that's worked in the last, 2 decades?
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. So before Steve Jobs passed, he had literally a video of his thoughts, and he had a very long-term roadmap that a lot of stuff was on, and the company has just fumbled from an innovation standpoint. They've crushed it operationally, and Tim Apple is great at that. And I don't know, how long or how far this goes. By the way, when Tim Apple was up with Trump, did you hear the funny comment he made about something like, well, it's apparent that Tim doesn't work out, but, we're not going to hold that against him.
Yeah, he did call him small, kind of like you called Connor small in one picture.
Right. I just thought
I think Connor's still reeling from that. I think he mentioned it yesterday, by the way. Connor, sorry about that, but hey, at least you're getting a feature in our show.
No, totally. I mean, and what do you expect? Like, you go on vacation for 3 weeks and you're on a yacht, right?
Yeah, it is sad to be him.
It is. If I was in my 20s and, was making all that cake and crushing it, he's got a great life. And I do appreciate what he does. Hey, you know what? Let's move on to the next element of our show, and which is typically going to be the flip. But we are exchanging the flip for a secret guest, not so secret anymore. We're going to talk to Jeetu Patel. He is the Chief Product Officer and President at Cisco. I unfortunately had a CNBC interview that I had to do, talking on some other stuff, but let's roll the tape.
President and Chief Product Officer, Cisco, Jeetu Patel, a regular here, by the way, on the 6-5. Thank you so much for taking some time. First of all, I just want you to know, because you may not know this, Jeetu, but every week, Pat and I have this segment in our podcast called The Flip. And it's like where we simulate a debate. And we'll pick a topic like, should the government sponsor Intel or not? And we have to debate either side. And even if we don't believe it, we debate each other. We go after it with one another. But I win every week. And so it got really boring. And so when we have a guest, when we have this segment where we bring, someone like you on, and we don't bring many people on, we skipped the flip that week. So I'm super happy because I was just, did you ever get tired of winning?
Does Patrick think you win every week, or do you think
matter what
you win every
Patrick
week?
thinks. I'm tired of winning, and I've convinced myself that I've won. But speaking of winning, Jeetu, great print. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was a beat on all ends. And I just, first and foremost, give me a little inside baseball. Give me a little Cisco inside baseball about the quarter.
Look, we had a strong quarter, and firstly, I'd like to say I think we've got an amazing team of people that are working really hard, and thank you to everyone for working as hard as you are to deliver an amazing quarter and an amazing year. We had product orders grew 7%, and it was solid growth across all the geographies. We had, our Q4 revenues were up 8%. Revenue, gross margin, operating margin were all on the high end of the guidance range. So overall, amazing quarter. We have to continue to kind of make sure that we keep innovating. I think in my mind, the way that this thing happens is you just continue to relentlessly keep innovating. I think the AI infrastructure demand is very robust. And that's probably if you were to think about one of the highlights of the quarter was that AI orders exceeded 800 million for the quarter. And so, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that because that's been probably one of the things that I've been pouting the most about is all these tech companies making an AI play that will not share AI's impact on their business overall. So they talk AI, they tell stories, they sing songs, they spin tales, but then it's like, well, how much revenue is this actually changing? And in some cases, the AI revenue is only replacing old revenue. For other businesses, it's growing, it's incremental. And the number you came out with, which was, I think, about $2 billion in the year and about 800 million in the last quarter, AI infrastructure on the back end that's basically supporting this build out. And that, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, 2 times what you had expected?
Yeah, so we had set the target of $1 billion in orders and product orders for the year. We did in Q4 alone 800 million, and we did about 2 billion for the year, over 2 billion for the year, and so that was double our original target. And the reality is AI has infrastructure constraints, it has a trust deficit, and it has a skills gap, and we're helping with all three. So when you start thinking about infrastructure constraint, like what are the constraints? There's constraint for power. There's not enough power in the world to go out and satiate the demand for AI. There's constraint for compute. And there's a constraint on network, because as these agents start getting to be more and more prolific, and as they start operating by them autonomously by themselves for longer and longer periods of time, the inherent demand for networking is going to go up, especially as the use case of computer use gets to be more and more prominent, where agents are using a computer just like a human would use it. And if you have 10 agents per human, and if these agents are working 7 by 24, that's like the capacity of 30, 30 humans that got added for every human that you have. And so there's a huge amount of upside on, just fulfilling the network demand. And that's going to have to, organizations are going to have to rethink their network infrastructure, both in the data center as well as in campus branch, especially as you have physical AI and robotics and all of that. You're going to need to have networking on the edge.
Well, let's talk about another thing that I think Cisco has done really well, and that's security. Jeetu, I know this is near and dear to your heart, but AI, especially in the enterprise, has moved a little slower, you could argue, than, say, consumer AI. And there's a lot of challenges. There's obviously building out the network. There's the complexity of enterprise IT environments. There's the need to keep data private, secure, compliant, governed. Cisco's really taken an active interest in that. I think you landed on our, on our recent Cyber 7 report, by the way.
That's right. Thank you for that.
We see the innovation and the growth, but talk a little
bit
about...
That was really good content, by the way. You folks are really thoughtful in the way that you've done, some of these dialogues and discussions. They're very substantive, so I appreciate you doing that.
We're trying to help the market really understand kind of what's the underpinnings of innovation, disruption. And, there's so much, I call it, maybe the right word is domain knowledge, provenance in a company like Cisco. Understanding an enterprise's IT needs to transform, it's not the same thing as just, hey, built on NVIDIA from day one, from zero, with no backbone, no data, no lineage, no governance, no compliance. But of course, Cisco securing the network, AI is only going to make that harder. So it seems like such a great opportunity.
It's actually, it's a great opportunity. It's also very natural as an extension for Cisco, and it's very timely given what's happening in AI. Because if you think about it, one of the big requirements of AI is low latency, high performance, so that you can make sure that there's no idle time for the GPU, and the packets are moving fast. Now, that's actually a very important thing. One of the things that contributes to low latency, though, is security has to be baked into and fused into the fabric of the network. And so, when I say that there's a trust deficit right now within the industry with AI, what I mean by that is most people are afraid of what the implications of AI would be, because these models that everything is built on, all the applications are built on, are by definition non-deterministic. They're unpredictable. And so safety and security is really important, because you have to figure out a way that you can validate whether a model is behaving the way that you want it to behave. And then when it doesn't, you have to have runtime enforcement guardrails. And for the millions of applications that are getting built, you can't expect everyone to build a cybersecurity stack. That's just not how the industry has evolved in the past. And so what you have to do is you have to make sure that there's a common substrate for security across every model, every agent, every application that anyone builds. And that's what Cisco brings to the table, is we can provide that common substrate of security fused into the fabric of the network, so that AI is not only low latency, but that low latency is when you have security embedded in a switch. What that allows you to do is it reduces the latency for how quickly the packet can get inspected too. And so there's just a ton of benefits to these things, and the architecture shifts occur. And this platform shift with AI is creating an architecture shift on security, and it's creating an architecture shift on the network side. And that's where we're at the forefront of both of those.
So let me wrap up with one thing, because I know we only have a few minutes. And of course, I'm a big fan of silicon, and you have a product. Sometimes I think that doesn't get enough attention, Silicon One. We always talk, you and I, both private and public, about kind of these three sort of rate limiters of AI. One's compute, one is energy, and the third is the network. And so you have this full stack architecture for networking, Silicon One, that you use at Cisco, but you also provide this. And I think sometimes people don't even realize that Cisco's in the semiconductor business, in the silicon business. Talk a little bit about that business and what you see in terms of that business and the opportunity there.
Look, I think one of our most strategic things that we've done that I had nothing to do with, by the way, I give all the credit to Chuck and team on that one, was the fact that we got into the silicon business. And silicon ASICs for networking specifically is what I mean by that. And so if you think about it, we are one of the very few companies that builds our own silicon, builds our own systems, builds our own OS, builds our own security platform on top of that. We have our own observability platform with what we are doing with Splunk. We have our own data platform. We've got our own models that we build, and then we've got our own applications. That full stack, hardware, software, silicon systems, all of those pieces working together harmoniously is very strategic. In fact, I would say, one of the beauties of what this allows the industry to benefit from us being in the silicon business in network ASICs is they have choice. You don't have to be beholden to just a few. You have another vendor that you can have as a choice, and that's been one of the most strategic, vectors for Cisco. Is we're not just a reseller of someone's silicon. We make our own silicon. We make our own systems. We make our own OS and software. So, and by the way, Martin, who I know the gentleman that runs our silicon business, has done a fantastic job over the course of the past couple of years, and we continue to keep getting better and better and better at it. So you should know that the future is very bright for Cisco with silicon, and it's one of the most important kind of dynamics of our business.
Yeah, we are tracking it closely, as you know, and continue to think it's an opportunity for a lot. And by the way, it's whether it's a customer, whether it's an investor. I mean, underneath a lot of the networking infrastructure that's out there sits silicon from Cisco. And at the same time, I think that companies that build their, we all get super excited about Google building its own AI chips, and we get excited about, all this custom. Well, you're doing for networking in many ways, and have been, by the way, a lot longer than they have, what these compute companies are doing. And it's very much part of that AI story. Jeetu, we're going to have you back. You had something? You want to say something quick?
I just wanted to say one thing, which is if you think about our structural advantages right now at Cisco, I think it's important for people to understand this. First one is we actually make our own silicon for the network ASICs. The second one is we have fused security into the fabric of the network. We're the largest networking company in the world. We're one of the largest security companies in the world. And the fact that those two coming together is very timely given the AI movement. And third is we essentially are able to serve the breadth of our capability from networking to security to data with Splunk, all tied into a unified platform, is something that's very hard to replicate by competitors. Those are the three big structural advantages in my mind: our breadth, our fusing of security with the network, and our silicon. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
G2, we'll have you back soon. Thanks for joining us for this Off the Record.
All right. I know that's awesome, because maybe I watched the video that I wasn't in, Daniel, but
you never watch a video you're not in, Pat. That is a lie. Go back and do that again.
I do all the time.
Do you really?
Watch this.
What do you watch? Everyone out there should know this, Pat, because they should know what they're getting into when they watch our show. Pat does send me weekend photos with him and his dogs in his lap, under the blankets. God knows what you and your dogs are actually doing. And you have our podcast up on the screen. And he'll send me notes. He's like, we are so good.
I think I in my brain, I thought I was saying like that was really good. But no, we are really good.
Yeah, my assumption after that is that literally you just on weekends, you're like, Paula, come on in. Pico, come on over. Let's watch the 6-5. I mean, it is the best television out there right now. So, I mean,
yeah, it really is.
I can't blame you, but
it is good.
I'm sorry you couldn't join me, though. That was fun. G2 is always great to talk to. And he's really shook up that company. I mean, they've had a great run.
No, I just love, I love the way he views products. He's viewing product development in a modern manner where it's not about the 1,000 people you have doing this. He's got 6-person pods to go create some amazing stuff, and hopefully he's money whipping them, which is required to do that. And the folks who aren't motivated to either grind or innovate or take risks or be accountable for execution are invited to go be successful at another company. But it's impressive. So hey, let's go to the final element of our show, and this is bulls and bears, where we pull apart the latest in the market, earnings, any reports that come out of the federal government that we can choose to trust or not trust. Let's dive in, Daniel. All right, baby. CPI, which is essentially what the consumer sees, the PPI, which is what the wholesalers see. Some really mixed numbers. I think on the whole, people thought it was higher than expected.
Yeah, CPI wasn't bad, but it was, I believe there was a first reading over 3% on core. And so, this can be a little confusing because there's different, the core basically measures all the things in CPI, but it doesn't look at food and energy, which, by the way, I've always said, why do we even care? Like, that's the two things like people need. They got a gas to get to work and they need food. So it's like, I guess that's a better, you'd think core would be the more important number. PPI number, though, was like really high. I mean, it was way above. But isn't President Trump firing the BLS lead? I mean, haven't we already sort of? So if his goal was to effectively neuter the BLS and the numbers that came out, I think he achieved it. And by the way, when the number came out, the market sold off pretty hard. You even texted me. You're like, PPI, it's shitty. And because I was actually in the gym getting huge when that was going on. I didn't even see it. It was a rare moment. I wasn't looking. And as funny as it was, Pat, it's like everything went red and the market ended up green. It's like the whole market's been trained to shake off any bad news at this point. Like, it can't be worse than 150% tariffs on China. We're good. Let's to the moon. So it's really hard to bet against things. I actually think it's going to cool off, but that could be, Pat, so in a serious note, this could be the first indicator that some of the cost, and I do think it's going to be a balance, some of the costs that are being absorbed are going to get passed along on some things. Here's the thing that I think is super important, and maybe this is my healthy skepticism on data, Pat, but like I still grocery shop for myself. I know you have people that do all that. They walk your dogs, they pull up your cars, but like I still actually go to the store sometimes. And I know, fancy boy, but I buy my own clothes. And inflation is not higher now than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Like, there was a window of time where it was like $20 for like a bunch of bananas, and they were like, it's up 2%, 2.4. It's like, no, it's up like 40. And now maybe it is 3 and 4. I mean, there is some inflation, but what I'm saying is like, it's so hard to trust anything. And by the way, can't we get like a Palantir, like a smart company with AI to just do this like in a way smarter way than like having people go to the grocery store and like weigh a pound of bananas and then like enter a form and send it in? And I mean, this is embarrassing. Like, I thought we were leading the world in AI, and then we still count physical. Like, I don't get why we're so stupid sometimes. Like, there's so much.
Dan, I don't even believe any of the numbers now.
No,
I really don't. Now, over extended period of time, I do. I don't buy these monthly things. Right?
Adjustments, yeah.
Yeah, and then the adjustments. It's just I just don't buy into any of it. There was an interesting thesis or interesting data point that I saw on CNBC that showed that we are actually buying more of our goods from the countries with the lower tariffs. Ding, 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 right? You got Mexico and Canada, right, at the very top. And my gosh, people are looking for other suppliers in different places with lower tariff rates. And this is, what I think we are trying to do here, ultimately getting the right stuff built here. I think there was also services that were driving a ton of the costs, which again, those could be complete nonsense, Daniel, like healthcare, hospital stays, all of these different services, home care, right, went up. I think 4.7%, right? So again,
By the way, insurance is freaking insane.
yeah,
As
that
a
was up
company
too.
owner that tries to provide decent insurance to employees, you're talking 20 and 30% premium increases every year. I mean, it is absolutely mind-boggling. Like, this seems like something like we could use a little help with, by the way. But like, so I believe some of the data from outside sources. Anyways, I know we got a lot of stocks to cover off on, which by the way is way more interesting to me than all this macro nonsense. I mean, who cares about that? The market's going up, so like, don't even care. Economic data doesn't matter. Jobs doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that there's going to be no jobs in like 3 years because, by the way, building a bot, want to replace myself. Anyone knows how to do it? Call me up, tweet me. I will pay you to build the Dan bot. I got to get off the road, Pat. I mean, you know how much more time I could spend in the gym if I wasn't on the road all the time?
Dude, you've been at home so long. I mean, are you kidding
I
me?
actually traveled every week, but I've had like a day on the road. Like, I've done way better about that. Like, we haven't had those 4 days in Vegas crap that we deal with. But by the way, it's all about to start again. Like 2 weeks from now, it begins. And then like, do you look at your calendar?
Yeah, I do. And my travel's all in red because you know me, I'm anally retentive on my calendar.
If there was a hellscape that was created for someone that wants to be at home more, I've created that hellscape. My end of August through like Christmas, if I had a calendar with real stuff on it, because I don't do calendar, but just kind of the bulk notifications I'm getting is I'm going to be home like 1 day a week for like 16 straight weeks.
Yeah.
Feel sad for me, Pat. This is where you show a little robotic Pat. This is the part where you give me a little empathy. So Dan, I'm sorry you're dealing with this.
Dan, I am sorry you're dealing with this.
You know,
I am. I'm serious. I'm serious. Now, I've taken 34 trips so far this year, and finally get a breather here. But it is interesting. My stress, my measured physiological stress, is sometimes lower on the road now because, especially in Vegas, because it's so regimented. But hey, Dan, let's jump into right into earnings here. CoreWeave, right? I mean, is this just a scam stock? Is this like the real deal? Like what is actually? Listen, I've heard it called just a Ponzi scheme before. What's going on? How they do?
So, I mean, amazing growth. I mean, you know, you can go online and kind of read that. I mean, they had 207% revenue growth. So, like, off they go. Big loss, wider than expected. Lost 100 million more than expected. You know, their adjusted EBITDA was fairly high, but this is a company that creates a lot of EBITDA because they've got this incredibly unprecedented 6-year depreciation schedules on their H200s. So this company's bought a lot of NVIDIA, and they put it all in their books, and then they put it as assets. This is a little bit of clever financial engineering, and then the way they basically create their income is by depreciating all this hardware. So they are growing revenue, Pat. I mean, a lot. I mean, in Q2 they did $1.2 billion in revenue. They're going to do $5 billion in revenue, but I can't figure out how that GPU depreciation schedule is sustainable. I'm really struggling with that. But I mean, the only thing I can say is CoreWeave is to the AI trade what U.S. Congress budgeting is to the global economy. All right. So here's my parallel: is CoreWeave can only has one option is to outgrow its really odd accounting the same way the U.S. has to outgrow its incredibly terrible fiscal management. So we have to grow faster because we can't control our debt. They have to grow faster because the way they make money is by depreciating these assets. But that's incredibly challenging on cash flow because EBITDA and depreciation doesn't create cash. So they're going to probably have offerings in the future. They're going to probably need to raise more money because they're going to have to keep buying hardware. And anyone that's seen, I mean, this company's buying hardware at an unprecedented rate, and they have to support growth. We've seen what happens when these cloud providers underestimate the amount of CapEx they need to make. They end up getting themselves pinned into a corner. And CoreWeave doesn't even have as much of a dynamic offering, Pat, in terms of like the true unique value prop, but what they have is just a ton of capacity, and that capacity is being consumed, and it's creating a lot of growth, and they should be happy with that. But I think they're always going to have people concerned about how that's all constructed.
Yeah, this is a growth at all costs. This company exists because, first of all, if you just want to do GPU workloads, and these folks came from Bitcoin mining, right? And they're financiers. There is, I know one amazing product person there from AWS. He's a total rock star. But we have to realize why these companies were, how they were set up. They're faster. They're bare metal. They don't have to run a ton of workloads, and they're there for one reason, which is GPU compute. Question I have that I don't understand is, what is their sustainable advantage outside this once the hyperscalers end up setting up bare metal, minimal software layers? Like what is their advantage? They don't buy enough GPUs to have a price advantage. They buy less power and energy, which means they don't have the cost advantage. They don't have their own proprietary AI accelerators, which means they're probably at a cost disadvantage. And I would say if they're going to run full up applications there, they're going to have to add some of the layers that companies like AWS and Google Cloud have to add. So listen, it's super, I love it the other reason is NVIDIA needed to set up an alternative to the big hyperscalers who are building their own ASICs if they got too arrogant or were taking too much business away from them. So interesting company. Need to know more about sustainable. So hey, let's move into Cisco here. Cisco absolutely crushed it. Literally a triple beat, right? On a day, stock was up, and during I would say a sea of red for the day, crushing it on AI. 2 billion for the year, 800 million for the quarter, and for the year, that's twice of what was forecasted. It appears that in the Ethernet versus InfiniBand war, Ethernet is winning. Splunk is delivering, albeit at smaller growth than I would have been expecting, but I think there are some things they can do there. And I guess, in the future, I'm looking for order to sales conversion, carry through from security observability as part of networking deals, and federal budgets. But, net, I think, Daniel, the AI, at least on the networking side, is working, and we haven't really even seen the enterprise kick in yet.
Yeah, you hit it, and of course, everybody check out the conversation we had with Jeetu where we dug into it. I did a segment this morning on Fox Business, and I kind of called it out. I did one a few weeks back where I said, "What's old is blue" with IBM. There is a bit of a renaissance, Pat, with some of these older, sort of well-established companies that people thought had been left behind. And I think it's just, there's been probably a gross miscalculation of how critical they are, especially to enterprise. Meaning that, while yes, if you're a startup from scratch building AI applications, CoreWeave might be the right partner for you. But if you have a massive on-premises deployment of your enterprise IT and you want to make pivots to AI, you're going to have to connect that, or as you like to say, that back end to the front end. And whether you're going to the cloud or not, you're going to need to update infrastructure. And you're going to need companies that can really help understand. There's a lot of domain expertise in enterprise that I think people are underappreciating. So while there are those like me that love to kind of call out the demise of Gartner and its 50% fall, and that, calling out the end of kind of traditional IT and then the end of smart consultants, I think there is a value at the very top of the market for wisdom. People like you that are wise and old, that will never go away, and an LLM will never replace, and you can't build that from the bottom scratch. You're going to have to connect it. And so companies like Cisco that are thinking about securing your network, that are connecting your data, and that are, innovating in a way that can take kind of what's we'll call it traditional, not old, and make it work with the new stuff, So basically it's enterprise IT meets Bitcoiners, and that's the future. And so we need a lot of that traditional enterprise IT and a lot of that domain knowledge, and Cisco's bringing it right now.
Yeah. Good. Nice, tidy
Funny
quarter.
today. You told me to bring. Pat always tells me the background, to be good, as if I'm not always good.
No, sometimes you show up, you look angry.
But I never
You did
take
this
it into the
morning.
show, do I? Usually it's
No,
just before.
Yeah.
I
No.
fake it throughout the show.
Okay. Or are you faking it before the show?
Ooh, I'm faking being mad, and I'm actually happy.
Right.
That's kind of funny.
I mean, you're kind of psychopathic and certain. No, you're not.
Sociopathic is how
Sociopath.
it's been better described.
I should
But
know
hey,
these.
you know what? We could rename our show "The Sociopath Meets a Narcissist."
There we go. We might be both.
I do think there probably is a high propensity to those two things crossing over.
Yeah, there is. I've had 15 years of psychotherapy. You'd think I would know these things, but you can't fix broken. Right?
Well, I did say the other day to someone, I said, here, I'll do a little public therapy. I have a dad that's not particularly emotionally connected. Never really said he loved me. Never really helped me. And by the way, to this point in my career, has never been able to say out loud that he's proud of me. Maybe he's not, by the way. I mean, there's a possibility he thinks I'm a dick. But then, so when people are, when I come out with my next big thing and people are poo-pooing me, I'm like, I dealt with that. Do you think I care about some rando on the internet trolling me? I'm good. I'm good with it. In fact, what is the old Reggie Jackson saying? It's kind of like people don't talk shit down. They talk anyway. So, All right. Anyways, that was my therapy session for the day. Can we add something? Shout out to the producers. We got the loser lap, the victory lap, and now we got Dan doing psychotherapy on air. I mean, we're opening up to people. We hope that as we become the world's best podcast, you get to know.
We're already there. Hey, let's jump into Coherent. Gosh, it got hit 20%, Dan. What's up?
This one was harder. This company's a little harder to explain, which you and I think do a pretty good job. Let me first say that they are so closely connected to all this data center connectivity. So when you think about connecting these data centers, the optical transceiver, this company is in a great position. Their CEO, Jim Anderson, regular on the show. We're very big fans. You can see he's operating the business very well. Margin growth, earnings growth, revenue growth. But they did have a bit of a I don't know what the right word to explain it was, but the market, they spun off their aerospace and defense business and got $400 million for it. And the market just apparently hated this. And I don't know if it was an algorithm. I don't know if it was conscious. I think it was probably the right spin, but for whatever reason, it dropped 20% in reaction to this. Now, with the opportunity that the company has in data center, I think going all in, double, triple, quadruple down on that is the right strategy. But they did get a bit of a reset on that, and for that. And Pat, between you and me, I couldn't tell why. I mean, it did drive their net income down. The way that it was the one-time impact of that sale showed them having a loss on a cash basis. And so maybe the market just hated that. But, I still focus on the fact that if we're going to see gigawatts of data centers built, this is a company that's providing technology to the biggest hyperscalers in the world. And I like that as an adjacent play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, I did a lot of research on this, man, figuring out what in the heck happened. And where I'm at it, I don't think the spinoff had any impact. And in fact, they put out the release before, and their stock actually went up. Okay, so then it left the guide, and if you look at their stock performance, a couple weeks back when they did the run up with the new capex numbers from people like Meta and Microsoft, it had a huge a pretty big rise in the stock. So the expectations were that because they're super aligned with these hyperscalers, the numbers would go up in accordance with that capex. And I think Microsoft went from 80 billion committed to 120 billion, or was it 100 to 120? But But anyways, it was a huge improvement, and they baked that into the expectation out there, which was gigantic. And net, and Jim had said this on the call. These were supply chain related stuff. They couldn't get enough. Demand is there. They just couldn't ship enough to deliver to the spike that came immediately. It takes a couple months. So I am expecting that revenue increase, and maybe on the guide they could have put that in there, but maybe they're just not confident that they're going to get supplies. But once they get a good track of their supply chain, they can improve that. There were some Chinese folks who saw the pop. That interesting. They don't supply to the American hyperscalers, right? These were Chinese competitors that deliver into China. So it's not like the Chinese are taking that. But anyways,
Certainly not going to benefit from the build here the way Coherent could.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the U.S. hyperscalers just don't buy from them. So hey, let's move on. To Lenovo, who had a excellent quarter, right? They had a double beat, and they increased their revenue by 22%, really on the back of PC. It's kind of wild. I mean, highest market share ever in PCs. I think it's around 25%. PC Group made $505 million in profit, right? I know we like to talk about PCs being zero profit, but not with Lenovo. You've got the Motorola brand from a smartphone crushing it. They filled this gap that when LG exited the market, but they've increased market share even more there, which is impressive. You have SSG, right? Good trajectory. We were on a call with their senior leadership team. We got the download. Not exactly a segment of the market that's crushing it, right? And I agree with you when you say that, hey, most of that heat has moved to being all AI. And if I look at their numbers, where they derive the revenue from, it was primarily X as a service, and there was a lot more non-PC related services that went in that. But there's a flip side to this. Their stock took a beating because the data center growth of 35% in revenue was great, but the losses continue. And investors want to know, hey, when are you going to start deriving profits from the data center? I mean, it's super hard. It was hard before for Lenovo to do this. It's even harder now when NVIDIA is taking so much more of the profit dollars, and there's not a lot left there. So they need to not only challenge here is Lenovo needs to increase scale with volume, get better penetration into enterprise upmarket, and they need to become more profitable. But they need to invest in order to make that happen. So, yeah, a great growth from certain markets, and data center is challenged.
Yeah, not much to add. Good take there. I think the AI infrastructure number was great. That's what the market wanted to see. The growth overall is good. The distribution of revenue outside of the consumer and PC and devices business is very promising. And I think it's on a good trajectory. I like the ESMB number too. I've told the Lenovo team, sell the enterprise. That's a part of the market that I think they could really shine. And it looks like that's been happening. It was a mid double digits growth there. All the other stuff, like I said, I'm kind of watching. But Pat, I mean, if you're evaluating that company, that's what to look at. And the other thing is, how do you squeeze more margin out of that infrastructure business? Because that business is getting squeezed. So it's like tons and tons of revenue, but at what cost? So the more they can figure out how to drive revenue and maintain and protect margin, the better. And I think that's where like ESMB, for instance, is such a good spot because you have a lot more pricing control than when you're kind of selling up to the hyperscalers. So good quarter.
Yeah. Hey, let's go into Applied Materials, the United States darling of chip equipment, and really the company that's beyond the shrinks, right? They do everything else. And if I look at, anyways, how they do.
I mean, they're getting beat up, but it was a very simple reason. They basically, another company followed a little bit of the Lisa Su and playbook, a little bit of the Jensen playbook, but without the same sort of affection of having GPUs and saying China just got taken off the table for us. And so we are going to completely guide as if that market almost doesn't exist over the next quarter. So they had a great quarter, by the way, like a record quarter, great growth. But as we always say, Pat, it's not what you've done, it's what you plan to do. And the market did not like the idea that China was out of play, but it is. I think this is a company that will benefit from the build here strategy. I think this is a company that as the China market, and I do think China's market will open up. I think you have a lot of political theater going on right now. The U.S. wants to sell to China. That 15% may be something Applied sees and Broadcom and all these other companies end up seeing, not just AMD and NVIDIA. But again, China needs what we have. So it will buy it, and it will buy it for 15% more. So my take, though, Pat, is it's a company that's an absolute necessity to the industry. It has a very, very strong moat. It has strong results, but it's going to take a little hit until people see that China market opens up. And it's not just directly to them. It's as it opens up to the others, it's the companies that Applied supply that sell stuff to China that will need what Applied Material does. So that's my take there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, everybody loves ASML, but basically ASML does node shrinks. Okay, it's making the transistor smaller, and I'm going to try to keep it simple here. Applied Material, what they do is not only do they have the materials, but what they do is they focus on things beyond the shrink, which are super important. Things like backside power, right? And when it comes to packaging, right? As you move to chiplets, and pretty much every market is moving to chiplets, you need Applied Materials to make that happen. So they zeroed out China, right? Which some other companies they didn't zero out China because they have much lower end stuff that could be shipped to China, like notebook PC chips from AMD. But Applied Materials doesn't have any of what's considered, below the line or in the green from a BIS schedule. And so they just went in and they zeroed out. The second thing is lumpiness. Okay, think about this. With decreased competition out there for all of this, you've got Samsung that's having challenges. You've got Intel that's having challenges. You've got TSMC that is stealing the day. You are going to have lumpiness. My gosh, we saw this with Lisa Su, where there's more competitors across her markets than there is in this very specialized equipment. So, it would have been nice if their lumpiness means that you're going to see stuff in the future, which would mean that you would put it into your forecast. But maybe we'll see as confidence comes, we'll see a revision for next quarter, or maybe, who knows, maybe they'll do a mid-quarter revision. But what I do know is they've got thousands of waiver and exemptions they're trying to get with the federal government to send in there, like GPUs. And there will, if there's an announcement that said, hey, like, we're good, we got these, then the stock's going to fly, just like we saw with NVIDIA and AMD. So, wow, what a show, man. An hour and 7 minutes plus. We're good. We're done.
You're pretty good. I was okay. B plus.
Nah, you're always awesome. You're always awesome. Hey, folks, and I just want to thank you for tuning in. Hope you have an amazing week here. This market is crazy. It's going to be good to not have earnings next week. At least I don't think. Well, NVIDIA is coming up, so I guess we'll
2
talk.
weeks. 2 weeks.
We'll talk the next 2 weeks about NVIDIA. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being part of our community. Take care.